Now, the battle has been raging for weeks. The latest reports still of heavy fighting right in the middle of the town, which has become a symbol of the plight of Syria. But now the people of Kobani hope that the cavalry is finally on its way. Already a group, estimated numbers ranging from 50 up to 150 of Syrian Free Army Fighters have arrived in Kobani. Closely behind, but still on their way, around 150 Kurdish Peshmerga fighters from Iraq. The question now, though, will it be enough to tip the battle in favour of those trying to defend the town from Islamic State Group militants? Well, in a moment, we're going to speak to my guests here on The Debate. With us here on set is Alan Kobane, who recently returned from the region. He's a journalist who specialises on Kurdish territories, Turkey, Syria, Iraq and Iran. Also here in the studio is Emre Demir, who's editor of the Franco-Turk paper Zaman France. Also joining us from Washington is Mutlu Siviroglu, who's a Kurd himself, keeps fully in touch with the situation on the ground there. Also an analyst of Syrian and Kurdish affairs. And finally, also in Washington is Kadir Ustan, who's a research director at the Foundation for Political, Economic and Social Research at SETA. He's an expert in Turkish foreign policy. Thanks to all my guests for being with us. We'll discuss it in just a moment. First, so let's just have a report on what the latest situation is on the ground, of course, in and around Kobani. Comes to you now from Mark Thompson.
A hero's welcome from local Kurds for Peshmergas as they make their way through Turkey towards the Syrian border. Some waved Kurdish regional government flags to show their support. The fighters, armed with heavy artillery, ammunition and rifles, are preparing to battle Islamic State Group fighters. Jihadist militants have been trying to take over the besieged Syrian town of Kobani since mid-September. Around 150 Peshmerga fighters will support local Kurdish militias, who've warned they face being massacred if they lose control of the territory. They're receiving help from the air too. 8 US-led coalition airstrikes hit Islamic State Group positions on Tuesday and Wednesday. Turkey has been reluctant to join the fight itself, fearful of revenge attacks from the jihadist militants and wary of empowering Kurds in the region who've long fought for autonomy. But Ankara has opened its roads to the Peshmergas and also allowed up to 200 fighters from the Free Syrian Army to cross over the border on Tuesday night. The militants, a loose coalition of moderate armed groups, have long been battling to overthrow Syrian President Bashar al-Assad with Turkey's support.
Well, let's talk a little bit, first of all, about the plight of Kobani itself and, of course, its people. We're going to speak first off to Mutlu Siviroglu, who's a Kurd himself, and I know you've been keeping in touch very much with people in and around Kobani to find out what the latest situation is there. Can you just give us an idea of what it's like for people there?
Okay, first of all, hi to you and all your viewers. Thank you for having me. The situation is that the Free Syrian Army group arrived, but the number is, the sources I have been speaking to, they confirm that the number is 48, not 200. I've talked to, during the day, different sources. They all say it's 50, but the precise number is 48, and the Peshmergas have not arrived yet. But the mood generally, the arrival, the idea that Peshmergas are soon to arrive has brought a positive environment to the city. And recently, YPG has caught the momentum. I spoke to a YPJ commander today also, Meryem Kobane. She was on the front. What seems at the moment right now is that the morale is high. People are very, very optimistic about the future of the city. They are confident that ISIS will be expelled. But last 3-4 days, there have been very fierce attacks by ISIS to seize the border crossing, that the only access Kobani has to outer world. They have been launching very, very fierce attacks. Sources tell me ISIS replaced the commanders who supposedly lost their faith or who are pessimistic that the city can be taken, seized. So there have been reinforcements from surrounding cities, and new commanders were sent to the ground to make the fight. But both YPG and other journalist activists are saying that YPG has been successful to repel attacks, and the border gate is still under YPG control. This is very important. ISIS really wanted to get the border before the arrival of Peshmergas and before the arrival of weapons. That's why they were pushing very, very hard. But until now, the YPG has been controlling the border gate. YPG has been getting more territory, and psychologically they feel better.
I'm sure that they're hoping that there's going to be a lot more than 48 fighters, though, because surely 48 fighters is rather a dip in the ocean, isn't it?
That's correct. That's correct. But even 150 Peshmergas are very few. But I think, in my view, rather than the fighters, first of all, the FSA is symbolic. So I think these people, the sources tell me, this group, these 48 fighters belong to Colonel Akidi, Abdul Jabbar Akidi. So he wants to be in the business, in the action. So he sees Kobani as an opportunity to come back. And Kurds, the officials I spoke today, they value his coming to Kobani and fight alongside YPG against ISIS. They value that. And coming to Peshmerga, even 150 is not really significant. But in regards to Peshmerga, there is the psychological impact that the Peshmergas have brought. Maybe you are also seeing throughout the route, Kurds are on streets. They are welcoming the Peshmergas. There is the sense of unity among the Kurds. You remember when Iraqi Kurdistan was attacked, when Erbil was attacked, it was YP. When Sinjar, the Yazidi Kurds were attacked, that was YPG jumped, and also PKK. So now the Iraqi Kurds are coming to help their brethren in Syria. So this creates the sentiments, very, very high, Kurdish unity, very high. But the weapons, the heavy weapons that YPG has been demanding, has been requesting, is more important than the number of fighters, in my view. So I am expecting there will be the heavy weaponry that will make really impact on the ground. So rather than the number of the 48 FSA or 150, I think the weapon coming along is more important. And also
Alan Caval, let me
say,
just go to Alan Caval. I mean, would you agree with that, that the heavy weaponry is what's needed, as you've obviously just returned from the region there?
Yes, absolutely. It's what's needed. Like the fighters, the Kurdish fighters in Kobani have been battling against ISIS with very few, very weak equipments, Kalashnikovs, RPGs, a few heavier weapons, but it was not sufficient to keep the ISIS at bay. However, one can wonder if the weapons who are coming from Erbil, from Iraqi Kurdistan, are really strategic and really heavy weapons. I mean, the Kurds in Iraq, the Peshmerga, have been fighting against the Islamic State also from the month of August. And if they have this kind of equipment which could really make a difference, they would use it in on their own territory. So that's why I think, like Mr. Çiviroglu, that this is a mostly symbolic and political gesture, and that this might not this might not change deeply the situation. The airstrikes are more important.
Somebody said as well, of course, that the whole battle for Kobani is a symbol, isn't it? It's not actually a strategically important site at all.
Yes, and in a way, by being symbolic, it's becoming strategical somehow, since the ISIS is pouring heavy weapons, fighters in this area, and it's also more aims for the coalition to pick and to hit. So it can become from symbolic, it can change and become more and more strategic. But yeah, concerning these weapons from Iraqi Kurdistan, I doubt that they could really turn the tide.
From your recent experiences there, what have you seen and what have you experienced while you've been out there?
Well, it was a very strange situation. We were on the Turkish side of the border, a few hundred meters from the battle. We could see the blast from the jets, we could see the fightings, we could see fighters from the IS, which were operating freely under the eye of the Turkish soldiers. And these people from Kobane sitting on the hill surrounding it on the Turkish side, watching their house burns and their neighborhoods being destroyed. And this was a kind of a surreal experience with the Turkish army doing nothing, and the Kurdish people from Kobane looking at their city in battle. And there was a kind of something very strange actually, because this geography is the geography of the place. It looks like the scene of a theater actually. You have this hill surrounding Kobani. You can see the battle from from the east side, from the west side. It's like it just. Yeah, and I think this is why also Kobani became so. People tended to focus on Kobani while Bashar al-Assad were gaining ground in other parts of Syria, and while there were all the battles raging in Iraq as well as in Syria.
Well, we'll talk about Turkey politically in just a moment, but let me just ask Emir Demir. I mean, as a Turk, how do you think Turkey, or people in Turkey, or just ordinary people rather than politicians, are viewing what's going on across the border?
Well, for Turkish people, for ordinary people, it's a complicated situation, and they see a really complicated policy from Ankara. Turkey are not at odds with not only with the regional rivals such as Iran, Russia, Baghdad, or Assad, but also with its closest allies. And I don't see how Erdogan hoped to have a say in regional issues while Ankara has such differences from its closest allies. And I sense that there's an inverse relationship between Turkey's actual position to the desire of having a capacity to be influential and the international towards Turkey, towards Ankara. And all of these issues creates a sort of a chaos, and it's really hard to understand for ordinary Turkish people. What can I say? I can say that Turkish people does have a fear from a war in Syria, and they rather fear the Turkish boots on the ground and the possible social and political consequences of that kind of a war.
They fear it, did you
yeah.
say? Yeah. What do you think of that, Kadir Öztan, joining us from Washington? How do you think Turkish people feel watching this across the border?
Of course, Syrian crisis has been ongoing for more than 3 years. And for the Turkish public opinion, they don't want to be dragged into a war inside Syria. And that's part of the reason why Turkey has been has been reluctant, as many people call it. But at the same time, what we see in what happened, what transpired in Kobani is that Turkey was confronted with 2 bad choices in its view. One is end up arming and helping PKK-linked PYD, and then having ISIS as its next-door neighbor.
Okay, we'll come back and talk about that in just a moment, but can we just talk about ordinary people in Turkey first? I mean, if they're sitting the other side of the border watching what Alan was just describing to us going on across the border, how concerning is that for them?
Of course, many people in Turkey feel solidarity with the civilians in Kobani. Now, most of them, or almost all of them, are in Turkey as refugees, and Turkey accepted them. Turkey also helped injured fighters in Turkish hospitals, and now it's allowing Peshmerga to go in and encourage FSA to help as well. But broader public opinion is not to be involved in a civil war situation. If Turkey were to enter on its own unilaterally, entering is relatively simple, but pulling out is not. And we know that from America's Iraq experience, and also the fact that there are no other countries who have boots on the ground. Why would Turkey go into Syria? It doesn't make a lot of sense for common Turkish people and public opinion in Turkey.
Alan Cavalli, you agree with that?
Yes, and I would like to add that there are all kinds of ordinary people in Turkey. You have ordinary Kurdish people who are nationalists, who support the Kurdish cause, and who are siding with the PKK and with the YPG in Kobane. And you have ordinary Turkish nationalists who are against that. And you have also ordinary Kurdish Islamists that have sympathies toward ISIS, even if they are Kurdish. And you have Turkish nationalists and Turkish Islamists also. So the Turkish society is deeply divided along lines which have been which have been deepened. These divisions have been deepened by the Syrian war, especially by what happened in Kobane, actually. A few weeks ago in Diyarbakir and in other Kurdish cities of Turkey, you could witness street fights, people being killed, civil war scenes in Turkey because of Kobane and because of the position of the government, the Turkish government, on this situation. So there are in Turkey a deep rift, deep divisions that are that could be reopened by this situation.
OK, well, as I said, we'll come and talk after the break about exactly where the Turkish government stands on this. I want to just go back before the break to our guest joining us from Washington, though, Mutlu Sivaroglu. I know, as I said, you've been in touch with many people in Kobani itself. Just give us a bit of a flavour about what it's been like, not just over the last 24 hours with this new development, but what it's been like for people who've had to leave their homes and abandon where they are in the city itself or in the town itself.
Okay. First of all, there are several thousand people inside of the city that many people ignored until recent time, but the Turkey is still ignoring. And Kadir also said that almost all people are in Turkey. That's not true. There are still people in Kobani, and now and more the international media is recognizing this fact. And there are also a large number of people stuck on the border. They are not in Kobani, but they are not in Turkey. They are stuck on the border. These people are there. But also there are hundreds of thousands, almost 200,000 people inside Turkey. Most of them are living very tough circumstances. So it is very, very hard for them to see their homes are destroyed, their lands, their fields are destroyed, burned, their corpses are not picked up. So their cars are stolen by ISIS, by thieves, by smugglers. So it's a very, very hard position. All their investment, all their savings, are going day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute. So what these people have been going through is really disastrous. It's very, very hard, very, very difficult. But they are a little bit feeling better because they know that the Kurds in Turkey, in Suruç and other towns, they are with them. This makes them a little bit feeling better. I met a guy recently. I shared his story on my Twitter as well. This guy comes from Istanbul for that day. It was last week, 25 days. He leaves his job, coming from Istanbul, and guards the border so that ISIS people will not cross freely. So there are thousands of Kurds. They are sleeping on the border to guard, so that to protect Kobani. So there is a kind of enormous unity, enormous sacrifices are being given by Kurds in Syria and Kurds in Turkey.
OK,
so
I'll have to interrupt you there because we've got to go to the break, but we'll come back very, very shortly, of course, and continue the discussion right after the news headlines in the break, so stay with us.